It's all good. What are you thinking? Like 15-minute kind of thing?
15 to 20,
Yeah,
something like
yeah, no
that.
problem, no problem.
If it goes on a little longer, I don't mind. I'll take anything and then edit.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
All right, welcome to the Games and Education podcast. This time I have a very special guest, the director of the Computer User Educator Conference. This is Jon Corripo, who, aside from being one of the people that runs the Q organization, he really you wrote the great book Edu Protocols. And if you even read this book, Edu Protocols, John, uh, everything you do in some way seems to end in being some way about making the classroom like a game.
I know, and it's funny as I appreciate gamification or gamification, depending on how you say it, but I rarely sit down and say, let's make a game. I usually say, how can I make this task more interesting? And it just turns out that by a happy coincidence, that games are how we get there, right? Like, um, you don't want to just do the task just because you have to. You want to beat yesterday's score, or you want to see your improvement or your personal best score. And I think the idea of that takes you away from the gulag, which is what I call the school where, if you've seen the movie Office Space, where I just go there for 6 hours every day to kind of tune out from the whole rest of the world.
So then, when you make it engaging like this, because I look at everything from Iron Chef competitions to uh, the different. I mean, I just start with Iron Chef, then to the different games that you just always run with classes. Even how you make. I loved. I was in one of your lessons about how to make essays into a game by every week growing upon it. Uh,
Yeah.
when you make games like this, or you just transform it in the game, what have you noticed really engages the students the most in this type of way?
Well, I will tell you, I'm going to go back to about 1999, maybe it's 2001, in that range. I could sit down and research and figure out exactly when it was. But basically, I had this was my big epiphany, and I think you'll really dig this as a history guy, Keenan. We had gotten a subscription to United Streaming. Remember United Streaming before it became Discovery,
I
years before there was a YouTube. Remember that?
I do remember those years so long ago.
So I was flipping through looking for some short videos because I hadn't heard of flip teaching yet. But I was thinking if I could find a really good 4-minute clip, I could really, like, this would be really fascinating to the kids, like a commercial for ancient Rome, right? So I was like, oh, can I find one? And I found this one clip called the Etruscans. Now, I like to think I'm pretty well versed in history compared to the common person walking down the street. And I was like, well, the Etruscans, what? So while the kids were working, I clicked play and I watched this little 3-minute video that was narrated by Peter Coyote, and it blew my mind. I was like, I had no idea about the Etruscans. Well, I looked in the kids' textbooks real quick, and the Etruscans were coming up in about 2 chapters. And I knew as a teacher that if I said to the kids, hey, let's learn about the Etruscans. Like, there's no Etruscan movies. There's no context. I would highly doubt there's an Etruscan video game, right? So there's ancient Rome, Total War, but there's no Etruscan stuff. So I decided I'm going to do a little experiment. And so I basically, without sight unseen, no setup, I said, hey, we got 8 minutes until recess. Do you guys want to watch a video real quick? And they were like, well, yeah. And this is literally like on a 34-inch TV, dude. This is not a flat screen. This is a big giant 36 34-inch TV on my classroom wall. And I played this quick little video clip. And the kids were like, whoa, that was super cool. Because the Etruscans, as I'm pretty sure you know, were the civilization that ancient Rome patterned itself after. And he briefly in the little video goes through it. So guess what, Keenan? 4 or 5 days later, we hit the next chapter, and you could literally, when the kids turned the page, they went. I could hear this rumble throughout the class. The Etruscans. Oh, this is gonna be good. And to me, I had created a little bit of drama about what the Etruscans were going to be. with this little preview. Well, that led to a secondary experiment. Now, this is years and years before I had the phrase gamification or gamification. Diane Main and I always fight over how to pronounce it correctly. And I did this. I found a download for a video game, a computer game, I should say, called Ancient Greece. And so I want you to think about what year this was, because to you, this is going to sound very natural. This is like, again, in this 2000, 2001 time frame. We're in to put it in perspective, we're on the computer lab is powered by Pentium 400 megahertz computers. Okay. And so I download the demo for this game called Ancient Greece. And so I tried this other experiment. And I want to do a quick pause on my way too long story already. This is why being a textbook teacher sucks, is because you never think about doing experiments like this. All you think about is getting through the textbook. And I didn't care about the textbook. So I took them into the computer lab. I said, start them up. And there's a computer game on there I want you guys to play. And they're thinking it's going to be like Typing Tutor, Reader Rabbit, something like that. And basically speaking, I said to the kids, I want you to go in and I want you to play the game called Ancient Greece. Well, they did what kids do. They started talking. And I was like, no. Here's the rules. If you guys want to play this game in my history time, no talking. You have to read the tutorial and you have to read the pop-ups. I will assist you if you can't read it, but I'm not going to read it for you, right? So, like, if you can't comprehend what it's saying, I'll help you, but I'm not going to read it to you. So the kids, they put their headphones on, they start playing the game. I'm walking around just chilling. So 5 minutes to go, time to clean up, shut them down, go to recess. The kids are like, okay. The next day they come to class, we play the game again. About halfway through day 2, the kids do this thing where this one little kid raises his hand sheepishly. I go, what's up? And he's like, well, I'm done. And I go, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back in, because this was just the demo of the game. There were only 2 levels. And so I go, I want you to play the game again and pay attention to what you learned from last time. And they're like, well, duh, it's a game. We play it over and over again. So by 3rd day, all the kids had completed at least 1 round. Most of the kids had completed 2 rounds of the game. So then the 4th day they come to class and I do this right here. I want you guys to make a player's guide for next year's class, because I want you guys to open up PowerPoint. I want you to do some screenshots, and I've got a little framework here for you. I want to make a little family tree of the gods, a family tree of the titans and the demons and stuff, and I want you to talk about which neighbors you should be friends with and how your economy works. So basically, what I did was zero lecture and letting the kids run this game or simulator. I had built all this schema, and in 5 class days, when we flipped back to the textbook, the kids were like, oh my God, this is so easy. They totally had the context. So those were my 2 origin stories for what got me going on this kind of mindset.
I love that so much, because you seem to focus on so many things I did want to talk to you about. Because I just wrote my own little podcast about this earlier today. There is extrinsic motivators, which is like gamification of like points, levels, math,
right,
gaining.
Right. And see, I'm not a super big fan of the points thing. I'm a big fan of the experience.
Exactly.
And that's why what I love to do with the card game, right? It's like people are just so mind blown at the experience that points disappear. And that's one thing where I don't want to turn my classroom into a pinball game.
I agree with you. That intrinsic motivation seems to be really where you're getting them with these games that you run. The whole talk of the motivation of how to get there, because I'm with you 100%, as I say, I'm not a big fan of the extrinsic points and everything. I just want them to make the classic game like that. Get them to write the player's guide, get that internal motivation in them going, lighting that fire in them.
Well, and that's where I think there's a really good kind of a Bob Ross crossover, which is I'm just going to do this because I want to, and I'm going to be okay with the fact that it may not be perfect, because I'm going to do it again tomorrow or next week, and that kind of that safe white space to fail and or iterate, I think is super powerful for people. Notice I didn't say kids, because I don't think it's a kid thing. I think it's a human thing.
Now, with that iterations, with trying to get those iterations, and I call it failing faster, at least that's my motto for
Yep,
it.
yep.
Um, Inside a classroom, because many people here are teachers that listen to this podcast, how do you get someone started in that shift of a mindset to it to really want to create that engagement in the students there? Where are some ways you'd recommend to start? I mean, I know one is read your book, Edu Protocols. That'd be a good start for many of them. I'll plug
Yeah,
it there for you. But like,
yeah. But I'll
what
tell
have
you what, I'm not into selling books. I'm into changing classrooms.
exactly? So
So,
what do you recommend for it that would be some good ideas that we could give them
well,
to get that
if you
start?
okay, so the first thing is I would say, and I'm just winging it right now because I don't have a fixed formula. To me, it's more of like if you take and I'm not going to tell you that I'm any kind of great cook, but I enjoy cooking, right? And sometimes I roll into the kitchen and I'm like, I think I want something with noodles. Well, then I go like, well, do I want a white sauce or a red sauce or maybe just garlic butter, right? So there's this kind of progression in the kitchen, and I think we can have a similar progression in the classroom. Anybody that's been fortunate enough to have a grandma and watch that grandma in the kitchen, because I know not all grandmas are cooks, but mine was. Uh, but be able to watch them just riff and go, you know what? We got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You know what I can make out of that? And so I think having that kind of sense of adventure and open-endedness is a big piece of it. The next piece of it is how can we have something that is, and this is goes back to my first and second years of teaching in the like 96, 97, 98 range, which was I am not going to stand in front of my classroom and read facts to kids and have them write it in their notebook. Okay, I'm not. I'm just not going to do that. I always wanted to be kind of the rock and roll teacher, like the far out, break the rules teacher. And I'm going to tell you, for anybody that's listening, here are my three favorite films. My three favorite teachers' film. Guess what? Freedom Writers, not one of them. Guess what? Dead Poet Society, love me some Robin Williams, not scalable. What he does, first of all, that movie ends badly. But secondly, it's not scalable. Every teacher does not have the persona to be a Pied Piper. So here's my three epic films if you want to get this mindset going. Number one, Summer School by Mark Harmon. Mark Harmon pays attention to what the kids want, and he makes deals to get them to engage the work in trade for other things. Gamification, am I wrong? Okay. Number two film, Summer School, Jack Black. Everybody loves that movie. Very few teachers that I've talked to have ever thought they can deploy that model in their classroom. And the irony of those two films is they were both Summer School, I believe, is 1998, and pretty sure School of Rock is 2006. Dude, these are decades ago. Decades. And those Hollywood writers understood engaging kids in an open ended process that didn't have a certain win or loss per se. But the idea was, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to try something, and we're going to learn a lot in the midst of that. And then my third favorite is Accepted, which is not as well known as the other two, but it's about a college level experience that's very similar. And so for me, I think you got to think like grandma in the kitchen. You got to take those movies and you got to, so like you had mentioned Iron Chef earlier. So here was the gestation for Iron Chef. We opened a new one-to-one high school, and I was pretty disappointed that most of our teachers were still doing lectures and, fill in the blanks PDFs and bold word activities. And I realized, oh my gosh, we haven't given them a framework that is different. So all they're doing is using the laptops to do the same old things. It was substitution years before I had that language from Dr. Puentedura. So we were literally myself and another teacher, and I think there were two students with us. We were driving, and I said, dude, challenge. How do we get rid of lecture? And the guy that was riding with me, the teacher goes, okay, let's just go through game shows, and let's go through game shows that talk about facts and information and a process, and how do we make that kind of a watered down version for class. So we tried Jeopardy, we tried To Tell the Truth, we tried The Price is Right, and I think it was actually one of the kids that said, what about like Iron Chef, because you get a certain amount of ingredients after you have to make a thing, and then people tell you how you did, and you have to make the thing quick. And so those were the roots of how Iron Chef happened, because 10 minutes, one slide, here's your tasks. It's like a miniature scavenger hunt. And then you get immediate feedback from the judges, which in the classic Iron Chef could be a teacher or a student panel. So does that help kind of get you in that Genesis level?
It does. That's what I'm looking for. I really want to talk to you about, because I really think, like, for the audience out there, that's so great. It is, how do I get started? And the answer is just say you, it sounds like the answer is just say you want to do a lesson better than you did before and figure out a way to make it happen. Don't
Yeah.
plan it out too much. Don't try it out too much. Just go with it and see where it lands.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite techniques is I do little things that only take 8 or 10 minutes, and I'll do them right before lunch or right before recess or on a Friday when we're all gassed, anyways. And it's just a quick thing. And then I sit back and I go, okay, if only half of that sucked, what was the half that was good that I keep? And then I iterate it and we try it again the next Friday. And I go, okay, now I've got this part is really good, but this part's still weird. Do I solve that with technology? Do I arrange the class different? Do I have the kids do more work, less work? And you just keep iterating it. And it really starts to naturally come together. I'm going to tell you a story from 1979, Paso Robles High School. My woodshop teacher's name was Dave Hutton. And every Friday, I'm pretty sure he did this as a energy management technique as a teacher. I don't think he knew what he had his hands on. Every Friday, he had one of the tool chests. All the tools were numbered, and he would have us sit around on Fridays. And where I'm going with this is, I'm thinking that on Fridays, he probably had wrestling matches, which I was a freshman. I was not aware of such things. And I'm thinking he was just doing a kind of a chill exercise on Fridays that allowed him to have not much prep time, not much correction, and he could be in a really good mood before the wrestling match, right? He had this toolbox numbered. All the tools in the box had a separate number, and he had a little spinny wheel he had made. He's a woodshop teacher; he can make anything. And we played Name That Tool every Friday. And you know what the thing is to this day, Keenan? Dude, I can name tools like nobody's business. But it was because we played the same little game every Friday. It was not a paper test. Everybody that answered at least 4 got an A. So his workload was easy. I have put that in my subconscious and pulled it out several times now. And the key is fun, lighthearted, lots of repetitions. And you don't get penalties for missing an answer, but you need to get a certain number right. See that little shift right there? So it's okay if you said file card and you meant Bill Bastard file, because you had certain number chances more to still get to 4. And that missing and recovering element, extremely memorable. When you miss something, there's a dopamine release.
And that is a gamification part here. I mean, we talk all the time about how gamification has that mastery mindset built in, and students nowadays are used to that, of constantly losing
Oh,
a
they've
game,
been
losing a
trained
game.
that. They've been
Yeah, they've been trained.
trained that in video games. Like the first time I played Call of Duty as an adult, it took me 39 times to get across to Omaha Beach, right? And then once you figure out all the little subtleties, don't step there, there's a landmine. Don't stand up now, you'll get your head shot off. You get that muscle memory, like here, 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 here. And then if you flash forward, hold on a second. Oh, I know. I'll tell you the origin story of the Fast and the Curious Edu protocol. I was doing some work in the San Jose area. I had about 28 English teachers, middle school, for the day. And it is classic, Keenan, and this is going to be a great wrap up right here, because I had this idea in the back of my head, and I had a quiz built, but I hadn't ever done it. And we were done a little early, and they were a little tired of just doing what we were doing. I was like, "Do you're language arts teachers?" They go, yeah. I go, you guys, you like the Latin roots? And they're like, oh, we love the Latin roots. I go, hey, I got a little challenge here for you. And I actually had a Socratic quiz built with 12 Latin roots. And it wasn't even the words, Keenan. It was literally the root. Okay. And so I started with the challenge. And I think you're going to dig this. I go, so rewind. You guys like Latin roots? Yeah. You guys think you're good at Latin roots? Yeah. You want to find out if you're good at Latin roots? And they are like, well, yeah, of course we're good. We're English teachers. And I go, good. So I dropped them in the Socratic quiz. And after the second question, they were all looking up at me because they didn't know any of them. And I go, oh, those aren't the Latin roots you normally work with. Those are from Michigan State.
I love it.
Well,
Just change it on them right there.
yeah. So I took the context, right? And it's like, but it's not what you expected. It's what I'm doing. So now you're seventh graders. I know all this crap and you don't, right? So, I just pulled the wool over your eyes. So long story short, off on the first rep, and I gave them no direct instruction. And this is where the birth of the Fast and the Curious was. No direct instruction. They got 27% right. They were a little motivated. They were pretty fired up. They were like, dude, we are English teachers. This does not happen to us. And I'm going to tell you how low level it was, relatively speaking. One of the Latin roots was tors, Tors. They got like 9% right. Think of what the Latin root tors means. I'm going to test you right now. What does it mean? The Latin root, the definition for the Latin root tors, Tors.
I am horrible at any of this. I
Perfect.
only
No, this is perfect though. This is going to prove the point.
I can only I'm thinking of calculators. So the only way I'm literally thinking tors is some type of tool.
Yeah. How about this? What does a torsion bar do on your car?
It tightens.
Yeah. What does your torso do on your body?
Oh my gosh, it tightens.
It twists. The correct answer is tors equals twist. Oh my God. I could have knocked them over with a feather. They're like, you are kidding me, Corripo. So I go, okay, so do you want to leave this here or do you want to try again? I'll give you direct instruction on all 12 of these. And so I did. I ran them through and we tested again. Guess what? 86% right. Okay. So then I'm like, you guys are looking real good right now. Do you want to leave it there? And this is just like I'm at the blackjack table, right? Do you want to hit or do you want to stay with that? And they're like, oh, we are English teachers. We are not going to settle for some crappy B+, bro. So we did another rep, and I think the class average shot up to 97 or 98%. And then they were very pleased with themselves. And I go, quick timeout. I want you to disengage with the game. I want you to understand what just happened. That was a 12-minute sequence. You went from a group score of 27% to a group score of 97% in 12 minutes. How do you think that you could play this game with human children? And they were like, oh my God, you just blew our minds. And that was where the Fast and the Curious came. The irony of this is, Keenan, I played a game to play the game. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
I live beta tested them and it worked. Now, in that game, I did 3 iterations. But that's going to be too long for groups that don't know me. We've been working together all day. So what I did was I lowered the cognitive load. When I do the Fast and the Curious demo now with people, because we are strangers, I lowered the cognitive load to 6 questions. And I only give them 2 reps. And so now I can routinely take groups of, I've had a group as large as 700 people do this. Here's the quiz on Nintendo. Class average is about 48% on the first go around. Out of 700 questions, Keenan, how many perfect scores do you think I had on a 6-question quiz on Nintendo?
At the after doing it?
The pre-test.
The pre-test, I would guess 20, 30?
3.
Oh boy.
3. 9 minutes later, we do I did the direct instruction, the feedback, gave them all the details. 9 minutes later, out of 700 people, we had over 450 perfect scores. And I think I can look it up if you want. If you want to challenge me, I can look it up. I think we only had something like 11 or 12 people who missed more than one.
So to finish off something here, because I think this is a great place to end, and I love that story. It sounds like even for yourself as you're talking that you wanted to challenge me. You just seem like you like to make everything a game for yourself, even as you're thinking of these ideas. Like it's almost like a game in itself to make them. Where you're like, how can I do this without
Oh yeah.
using this? The
It's
restrictions. So
way more about me than classic teaching. I'm trying to see how can I maximize the experience for them. And that, I think you picked up on a subtle shift, which is I'm trying to see how much I can challenge me at them doing better, which is very different than some teachers' aesthetic, which is I'm going to do this thing and you see if you can figure it out. There's a very subtle shift there between that and I'm going to see how I can trick you into being even better by creating the optimal conditions, as opposed to here's a handout, go study it, and then I will try to trick you. Do you see that? There's that little small shift right there.
I do, and I think John. I know we both have to go. We started this as a really late night to the audience here,
It's
but
2
I want to
a.m.
leave.
That's not a problem.
Oh my gosh, you're in the East Coast. I'm in.
No,
I don't.
I'm in Oxnard. It's not that
Oh, okay,
glamorous.
you're 20 minutes away.
I know.
Um, all right, but on that, I do want to just share this with everybody. That should be the parting note for this thing. If you really want to work on gaming your class, make your own challenges of games. Make it a
Yeah,
game for yourself. You can make these things and see what comes out of it. I feel like
yeah.
I'll, yeah.
My
All right.
one of my one more parting thought. My epiphany about I was using Easy Grade Pro in 1999, and I said to myself, if only 50% of my homework is coming in on Fridays, I'm not doing something right. It's not the kids. They're either not engaged in my homework. I didn't explain my homework. There's too much homework. I started working it from what was I doing wrong. I was challenging myself to say when the kids go to turn in homework on Fridays, I should have 90% coming in, right? If it's 100%, it might be a little too easy. But if I'm at 50%, I have to create different conditions to get the result I want. So it's weirdly selfish, but it's to the benefit of the group.
That's a great way to think about it. Thank you so much, John, for being on my podcast right here. If you have not heard of Jon Corripo, I do recommend checking out the Q organization that he's part of, stopping by at any of his talks that he has, and his book, Edu Protocols, is a great one. We are actually reading it as a group study. We just voted today, John, to read
Oh,
it as a
right
group
on.
study in our at our district. So it
Cool
is
deal.
also a great one. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're super welcome, Keenan. I'm a big fan of the work you do, and I love what you do with history and making it come alive.
I thank you very much.